Alrighty, let's go, says Tomb King Tristan. So we know the chat gang is here. I am Mephisto, the host of RantCast. This is episode 34. You are chat gang. Welcome, everybody. I've got two legends from Down Under joining me tonight to recap CanCon 2020. On my left, I've got Anthony Magro, the AOS Coach. Say hello.
G'day, mate. Thanks for having me. You guys don't know who I am. If you don't, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Right. And and Rock in the middle, keeping us strong here in the middle, is Clint from Heralds of War and the TO of CanCon itself. You say hello?
How's it going?
How's it going? All right. All right, man. So, CanCon 2020. The biggest one yet, right? I get...
Yeah, definitely the biggest one.
Definitely. He's still like, still...
It could be bigger. It could be much bigger, but Clint is holding the Australian community back from Warhammer goodness.
Is that what's going on? Is that what's going on?
Look, leading into CanCon 2020, there was a hashtag that was trending called Make It 300, and I'm not going to spoil it for Clint, but he refuses to listen to the demands of the community.
The shade out the gates. This is...
Yeah, well... When we actually hit the player cap that we have, then maybe I think I'll think about extending it. But, people have other things to do.
We did sell out, in 12 hours.
So how many did you have actually attending CanCon 2020 this year?
It was 217. And then, so we obviously had a Gumby player.
Right. Well,
yep.
Drop at the last minute or whatever.
Yeah.
But you did sell out basically within 12 hours and then just a drop or whatever. Right, cool.
Yeah,
right on.
Yeah, we broke the ticketing server within about 10 minutes, and then it worked intermittently for the next 5 hours, and then sort of it was all sold out by lunchtime the next day because they went on sale at midnight for some reason. That's just when the convention put them up.
Right.
And when we blew up the ticket sales at 12:15 in the morning. Surprise the century, no one wanted to help. So, lo and behold, that's why it took us 12 hours to sell out. And really, it probably would have taken us 2.
Right. Right. I mean, if it wasn't for the spotty. And you had a huge international draw to CanCon, obviously. I know that one of the gentlemen from Age of Sigmar had a massive televised showdown of the century, I'm told, perhaps in the entire universe. Go down there and he grudged one of your boys down there for that.
Yeah.
So that was pretty funny. Just watching that all play out on Twitter from my perspective. 217. It's not too bad. That's the biggest in the world, isn't it?
Biggest AOS Singles event in the world.
Yeah. Wow. So I've never personally been to CanCon, but it's kind of become like my main aspiration these next few years is to start hoarding some nuts, saving up for it. I plan to hopefully make it down there. Probably going to be like a 3-year timeline for me. I know. I can see the disappointment in your face there, Clint. And Magro. Man.
It's cool. I get it. We're a long way away from other things. Talking to people. And they're like, I'd really love to come, but it's, 30 hours on a plane. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, from my perspective, once I'm flying to a country, it might as well be any country. Once I've put in the effort of getting a passport to leave the States, time is just time. I get enough. I'm fortunate to get enough vacation time personally to where I could just if I'm gonna make it a point to make it out of the country, I'm gonna dump vacation time on it. I know not everybody sits in that boat. From there, the logistical thing is family and making sure that I'm not, in setting something up like this, that I'm not, dipping into family funds. It's coming out of the play money, and that's where the obstacle is for me personally. And I, like a fool, decided to buy a house this year. So I could have went to so many CanCons if I didn't do that.
I feel like you made the right choice for your family, though.
You think I don't know.
Well, it's hard to paint Warhammer in a cardboard box on the side of the road, mate, when you get kicked out. So
I'll make it to CanCon one day. But no, like watching it from afar. Hey, Marok Wolf. Hey, Kyle. Like everyone's kind of filtering in here now. We're getting all chat gang now. No, I've actually like I've noticed just kind of like from like just bantering with folks. Like I feel like I have that the Age of Sigmar community in Australia really strikes that balance between being sort of hard-nosed competition where you're going to get people who really know their lists, but you're also going to have a great time with just like awesome people. And I mean, it doesn't seem like this, there's some banter, there's some shade, but like it doesn't seem like it's like it's not in good fun ever, and that's just my read on it. Could you I guess what makes, oh, go ahead, you seem like you got a point there.
I was just going to agree with you that we get a really good mix in the scene overall, not just at CanCon. So
right. No, I just like I said, I've admired from afar, and it's just like, man, if I'm gonna go out of the country, this is the one I'm gonna make. So you don't have to sell me too hard, but just like, what's your elevator pitch for people? Hey, come to CanCon type thing, or come.
Thanks. So come play games of Warhammer with awesome people in a converted aircraft hangar in the Upside Down at the largest event in the world.
Pretty easy sell. What's going on, Coach? What's going through your head?
That was horrible.
That was horrible.
I'm not a sales guy. I'm not a sales guy, right? Like,
and that's why I was watching with intent to see how you would pitch.
How I would squirm. Yeah, thanks, mate.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy.
Okay.
I'd stay at home.
How would you sell it, Coach?
Well, first off, you need to appreciate when CanCon is happening. So CanCon is happening in the Australian summer. So it's beautiful 30 to 40 degree weather, or in American terms, at about 90 to 100 degrees. So being on the east coast of Australia, you've got plenty of beaches to bring your family and your children to hang about. Come to Sydney, come to Brisbane. Lots of cool stuff happening during the summer period. Leave your kids and leave your wife in Sydney if you prefer, and come down for 3 days of amazing Warhammer, where we have a big party barbecue that happens the night before. You get to play 5 to 6 rounds of Warhammer, as well as a whole range of other great things from all around the world. People are coming to CanCon, and then you come back to Sydney, see your family, see your friends, and just have a great time in the Australian weather.
Oh, there you go. See, I think that sounds pretty appealing. Vacation and gaming, right? And
I think that's the key. I think for anyone who's international listening to coming to CanCon, it is a perfect time to come and have a holiday. So don't just come for 3 days, don't come for 4 days. You can really make some time. It is only a short drive out of Sydney. It's about 2 to 3 hours drive. But you've got a whole range of wonderful cities that are merely an hour's flight. And our flights are relatively inexpensive as well. So you could fly to Brisbane, you could fly to Melbourne, and all of those wonderful places have their own culture and their things to do. So Warhammer is obviously one thing, but you could easily make a wonderful holiday out of it.
Yeah, from Milwaukee to most of the Midwest tournaments which tend to happen around the Chicago's area, it's about a 2-hour drive. So that shot from Sydney to where CanCon
it's almost no traffic. It's country roads. You get to see some wonderful little towns. I was in the car with Vince Venturella this year, so we got to see some wildlife. You got to kind of hang out some country towns and eat some wonderful food. So it is a scenic drive as much as it's not. You're not in traffic for 3 hours.
Well, if you need help selling the wife or significant other, Australia actually has like a fantastic wine scene. I know from being a little bit of a wino myself, like. Some really good, because they have some arid climates. If you don't know anything about vinting or making good wine, essentially the best wine is made by punishing the grape as much as you can. And apparently Australia has some pretty punishing some arid fields and stuff like that where they could make some really good grapes. And this is where, of course, like Australia has their own vintage of wine. That they kind of came up with down in Australia that's really, really tasty. And I think there's some wine fests that happen around that same time period, too.
We have great wine, we have great food, we have great coffee, we have lots and lots of cool things. So one of those things that I would say, ask for forgiveness, not permission, and just book your trip to CanCon today.
CanCon, got it. All right, I'll go ahead and Would you? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Clint, how much commission do I get out of this, by the way?
Not a thing. Not a thing.
So I mean, that does lead into a decent question. Throwing together a 217 person event, that probably takes a lot of time from you, Clint. A lot of preparation. No, maybe a few extra hands. Maybe a few extra hands or a little help from the community. You care to talk to a little bit about that? Like, what goes into prepping CanCon for you?
My sanity, mainly. No, I'm lucky. So CanCon. So I run the AOS part of CanCon. It happens as part of a convention, and so there's obviously other games and things like that. But there's an overarching structure there that deals with a bit of the logistics for me, which is very helpful.
Okay.
Because I live about 14 hours away from 14 hours drive away from where CanCon is. Mm-hmm. I'm in a completely different state, so that always makes organising stuff interesting. But around now is when I start planning for next year's event, and it's just really trying to make sure that we create an event that gets the most amount of players across all of our different sort of hobby and paint and narrative and stuff like that. So we start working on that, on those thoughts now, and then as we get closer, obviously, this past year, I decided that I didn't want to borrow terrain from anyone, so painted up probably about 500 pieces of terrain.
All the
some of which was
right.
Yeah, not all of them. So we got a bit of support from Games Workshop for this year's event for the first time, which is really awesome. So lots of terrain prep, lots of planning, lots of spreadsheets, trying to make sure, that we can stretch the dollar as far as we can and give as much back to players as prizes or freebies or whatever. Yeah, so it's a lot of planning. I spend lots of my lunch hours at my desk at work with Excel open, trying to make sure that this is going to get made, or this is going to be done, and this is going to, try and organise all these things to happen so that they arrive at Canberra at the right time.
Right on. And I know from talking to Coach a little bit about his tournament, Sydney GT, that he actually does the table. He'll actually map out the table layouts. Do you do anything like that too, to make sure that you can fit all these people in that hangar? Or do you just
No, because that's part of what the convention does, which is really quite helpful.
Right.
The convention provides a fold up table and a 6x4 blank MDF per thing. And what's really been good is when we started at CanCon a few years ago, we were 40 odd people, and we just kind of turned up and did what we were told and whatever. Mm-hmm. But as we're sort of grown and we're now the biggest event in the convention, they say, we sold out, and they're like, okay, well, where did you want to be this year? Where did you guys want to be in the hangar, in the halls this year? And we're like, yeah, well, we'll take this block, so they have all the tables set out into blocks to make organisation easier. And we're just like, yeah, we'll have this whole one over here in the corner. That's fine. That's us. So that's kind of useful, not having to worry about all that MDF. But then we have tabletops that we put then on that, and that's yeah.
Right on. So you as the event's grown, you've essentially gained more agency over it because you've become the hot ticket, right? You've become one of the big events at this larger convention.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we've gone from being told what we can do to asking and getting our way most of the time.
It's actually funny. I'll share a story. So CanCon this year, so prior to the ticket releases happening for CanCon, so as Clint alluded to, it is a multi-system event. So you have Ninth Age, you have 40k, you have Bolt Action, you have Bushido. There's a whole range of different games that play at this convention, kind of like an Adepticon, but not in a hotel. Anyway, there's usually a lead-up time where we know that tickets are going to come up on sale about 30 days from now. And, different communities where 40k, and people were saying, guys, Sigmar sold out really quickly last year. We need to get our asses into gear and buy tickets straight away. And everyone rallied the troops, yeah, we're going to beat Sigmar, we're going to crush Sigmar. Didn't happen. 40k, I think, had sold 50 tickets by the time we had sold out 200. And the story that I wanted to share was that right after that, you had all of these people jumping onto the organizers of CanCon overall, the organizers, and basically said, don't give Sigmar any tickets. We're not going to have any tickets left. We're never going to get to play. And there was a massive freak out until Clint jumped in and said, guys, we're staying at the number we're staying. Chill out. Because people were seriously concerned that Sigmar was going to be 500 players at the rate of ticket sales in that first 12 hours. I know Clint's saying no, but players from opposing systems were freaking out that because we sold 200 tickets in 12 hours, that it would basically be Age of Sigmar featuring CanCon.
I actually think that's fantastic. To that end, why do you think Age of Sigmar has taken off so thoroughly in the Underdark, in the Upside Down there?
As a whole?
Yeah. Just my read is I don't see a ton of 40k posts coming from Australia. It could just be because I've pruned my feed specifically, but yeah, why do you think you see Age of Sigmar just really taking hold down there?
It's a great system, and I think lots of people put work in very early on to make sure that the community was as welcoming as it could be, because at the start it was the people who played Sigmar versus the rest of the world kind of thing. We had this system that people maybe didn't like or whatever, and that I've heard discussion, the faithful, the people who played it, and then but you also had these folks who were curious about whatever, and so the scene was super welcoming, and in order to make sure that it kept growing, and so we have that great vibe, which then means that more people join, and then but they tend to join for the right sort of reasons, to have fun and that kind of thing, and then and as a whole, people see their friends playing Sigmar and having a great time, and then it sort of grows and grows and grows and grows. And I think the Australian community just has a really good attitude towards the game, which means that it's much easier for people to join and play and feel accepted. CanCon is the first tournament for so many people. There's it's a fair percentage. Magro will know because he's done the stats. But they pick that as their first tournament, and they come along and they have a great time, and at the end of it they come and say, that was awesome, I'm going to play in more tournaments. And you go, well, here's the list of stuff, pick some that are close to you, and off you go, kind of thing. So
so it's this really great ambassador event for the Age of Sigmar community. CanCon essentially takes that. Do you know, Magro, the numbers on that, on how many new players or you had at CanCon? Or
yeah, I do actually. So in the lead up to CanCon, Clint was very kind enough to allow me to do the list review show. So Clint, myself, and Liam Shadowhammer, we did the list review show, and as a part of that, I had sent out a personal survey to the community to us, basically elicit, I wanted to know about them, where they're coming from, what their experience levels were, how often had they come to CanCon. I really wanted to get a good understanding of who was attending.
So one of the famous coach surveys went out.
I mean, it was a survey. Hey.
All right.
Listen. Look, for me, it was really interesting because we had never done anything like this, and even finding out simple things like what were the most dominant gaming clubs that were going to be in attendance. And I think for us, that's something that we can look at our communities moving forward on how we can grow the rest of the scene. But two of the interesting data points that I found out was that 12% of our player base that was attending CanCon had been playing Age of Sigmar less than 12 months. Another 11% had only been playing for a year or just over a year. But the bulk of our player base was really coming in between the years 2 to year 3, and then 40% for year 4. So as Clint has mentioned, CanCon started, the first CanCon Age of Sigmar finished on 48 kind of players in attendance.
47, yeah.
47 in attendance. It then grew to 110 purchased. I don't know how many actually ended on the second one.
47, 104, 196, 217. That's average.
Until Clint stopped us from growing and put his hard foot down at 240, we were basically doubling every year. And I think if I think about one of the key aspects of selling and using refer a friend, if you just refer one friend to a product or an event, you've doubled in size. And that's essentially what's happening. Yeah. The 55 players of that 47 that came to CanCon #1 had such an amazing time that they told their friends. And then that second year, if they brought one friend from their games club or their community or their FLGS, we're at 110 players. And then the other call out I would make is that 42% of the players that came to CanCon for Age of Sigmar said that this is their first experience to CanCon. So, I was talking to some people in the past, and we joked about Games Workshop's New Year, New Army concept. And it's funny because CanCon is our New Year, New Army. A lot of people start preparing for CanCon to kick off their first tournament season and their new year with a new army. So January 1st is not when we start new armies. We start in June, July, August, thinking about what we're going to run at CanCon. And then that is we're going to run our Cities of Sigmar, our Gloomspite Gits from that year on.
See, that's so just a real quick recap. About half the people at CanCon this year, this was their first CanCon experience. And about a quarter of them overall, this was their first AOS tournament experience. When you combine those, when you it was like 23%, I think is what it came in at. Like that's a huge chunk of like sort of new blood injected into the tournament, CanCon itself and the scene, which is really cool. Yeah. And speaking of telling one friend about something, you should tell your friends about ranking. No, so that's actually really cool. And this new year, new army thing that GW pushes for, pushes sort of from like the ground up, like, hey, build a new army. It's nice to have a tentpole event to drive towards. For me, my Bone Reapers wouldn't be done right now if it weren't for Wapaka happening, and that's a regional local thing for me, but like picking that big awesome tournament that's just already kind of a good sort of ambassador for the scene, and going, I'm gonna go to that's gonna help you sort of self-motivate and accomplish those goals. I think it's really nice to have specific goals in mind when you say, I'm gonna start an army, right?
Yeah, the road to CanCon army projects is a real thing. I think, like, people, as Anthony said, people are starting July, August to think about what they're taking to CanCon, basically, because the General's Handbook's out. They can go, righto, well, I want to plan on something such an army, and off they go. And so some people have been working on their armies since that time, right. All the 6 months leading up to it, and some people go, crap, CanCon's in 2 months, I best go.
Right. Gotta kick it into high gear. Gotta kick it into high gear here. So Chat Gang's alive here. I actually want to double back to something one of the members of Chat Gang here said, which is distracted Sat I think it's Sat Rap. He said that like the sort of like the grassroots drive of the content creators in Australia has been a big contributing factor to the growth and the sort of approach to the scene. I think it was your words, Clint, where you said like people are playing for the right reasons, or they were getting into Age of Sigmar for the right reasons. And I think it was a Chat Gang here alluding to sort of like the content creators. And I can, as a dirty American, the first content I watched was like AOS Coach and Doom and Darkness. And I think that do you think, I guess, content creators play a role in sort of driving interest towards CanCon or into your tournament scene in Australia?
It certainly plays a huge factor.
Heralds of War also, like your own podcast, right?
Yeah. We were the first dedicated AOS podcast coming out of Australia.
Right.
But it's okay. You can talk about Coach all you want. Poor Doom gets relegated to second place there. I'm kidding.
If you're not first,
I could just see Anthony's face.
I was listening intently. Go on, please.
Yeah. So I feel like there are so many Australian content creators, whether they're sort of internationally recognized, listened to or not, but it feels like every sort of region in Australia has a content creator at minimum. Some of us. So I live in a town of 120,000 people, and we have 2 podcasts that come out of. So myself and the Failed Charge, who also do streaming and things like that. So, there's content creators all over Australia, and we all offer something slightly different. Mm-hmm. But the end result is we're all playing AOS. We all love AOS, and we're all trying to help more people enjoy the game. Mm-hmm. And bring them into these things. So everybody was talking about CanCon at one point, in the last 6 months, which always helps drive towards that. From Anthony to Doom to Dwellers to
Bush Radio.
I plugged it a little bit on mine. Yeah, Bush Radio. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I try to think of other content creators as collaborators, not competition, because you say
absolutely
you say something about CanCon, right? Then I'm gonna, as a content creator, I go, oh, CanCon, Clint said this thing, and then I get to riff on my own show for 20 minutes about this thing. You've helped me create content too, so I think that one of the things that might actually be unique to Age of Sigmar, I'm just gonna make a bold statement here, might actually be the sort of like the content creators as collaborators as opposed to competition. I think that might actually help our scene grow over some other, other scenes that might like take more of a be first mentality towards their own content. But that was just something interesting I saw kind of repeating here through chat.
I do want to call out as well a huge component to selling out CanCon, and another stat that I pulled up was the Games Club recognition. So there's a whole bunch of gaming communities, and if I think about growing a tournament scene, and actually Clint and Gabe from the Runax, we had a good chat on my channel about 6 months ago about gaming communities or gaming clubs who come together. And I look at Measured Gaming. Measured Gaming had 13 players attend CanCon. My gaming club, the Lords of Ruin, had 10. Clan Filth had 7. Borderline Gaming from Albury had 6. Beast of Belco had 5. So all of a sudden, when you have one guy that says, hey, we're going down to Mecca, that is CanCon, and 5 dudes are going to come with you, or 5 girls are coming with you, all of a sudden, you know, 5 gaming clubs, 10 gaming clubs all do that, you're at 80 players. Mm-hmm. Then add the amplification that is the content creators, that, hey, we're going to CanCon. You kind of remove buyer's remorse. You know, people don't want to go down to an event they've never experienced, spend all this time and money away from their family, only a few weeks after Christmas, which is a crazy expensive time, and some people aren't working. But all of a sudden, you remove that buyer's remorse, like, this is an amazing time. Here's some videos. Here's some photos. Here's my hobby progress. All of a sudden, the hype becomes real. And I've seen in my gaming clubs that I'm a part of, you know, I don't want to say peer pressure, but it's like, you got to come to CanCon. You got to come to CanCon. Why aren't you buying CanCon? Get on the wait list. If you haven't bought a ticket yet, make sure you jump on that wait list, because it's one of those must-see, must-attend events. Because we know that we don't want you to miss out.
Well, there's something to be said for taking an event and making it an experience. Like, that's the next tier. You know, I can skip an event for the next event, but when something's an experience, that's something that I keep with me, right? And so I think that that's probably a little bit of what you're kind of sort of talking about there, Coach. Is it's not just an event. This is an experience. This is a big, you know, it becomes, you know, this is not just 5 games of Warhammer. This is not just a generic tournament. You're coming for more. And much like I experienced at Adepticon,
what happens outside of the gaming table is just as much, if not as more important than what happens on the gaming table. It's the barbecue on the Friday night, the Doom and Darkness setup that we all hang out, have some beers, have some laughs, settle in before the tournament event. It's the hanging out after lunch. It's the casual dining and the casual shit talking that happens on the Saturday night and even the Sunday night when the event's over. It's all these little things that make a wonderful event, not just 5 or 6 fantastic games.
Right. And so real quick, does CanCon then run from like the Thursday through the Sunday, or is that just Friday, Saturdays? Sunday?
It's always 3 days, and it really CanCon takes place around our Australia Day weekend, and which is the 26th of January, and so as that moves through the week,
and this is a national holiday, right? Like this
it's a national holiday, yeah.
We have a Memorial Day or whatever. Like this is
Yeah, Australia Day has some stuff attached to it locally, but it's a holiday. And as that moves through the week, basically they will change whether CanCon is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Okay.
Just to align with that holiday so that people can maximise their time off and things like that. So traditionally, there's only AOS on the weekend, on the Saturday, Sunday. Mm-hmm. But other games run. I think they run, Middle Earth on the Monday. They run all sorts of stuff on the other days.
40K is a 3-day event.
40K is a 3-day event because they're insane and want to play far too many games.
8 games. I don't know how they can do 8 games.
I don't know how they talk people into it, to be honest. We have enough fun with 6 games, so yeah.
So is it 3 and 3, or is it 5 and then you cut to a top 8 and do the 6 game type thing?
No, it's a 3 and 3.
3 and 3, okay.
3 Saturday, 3 Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool. And then this club aspect actually is really funny to me. That you do have that, and I think that just kind of separately, like having a rooting interest or something, clubs give you that, and I think that helps make events more enticing. I know we're starting to see a little bit more club focus here in the Midwest, and I think that's kind of upped the interest, because you're not just like playing for yourself anymore. Now you're playing for like a little bit of club pride, and and now there's a little bit of club shit talk and banter back and forth, and I think that stuff just kind of makes things a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fun. So not to let that point go by too much. So how did the responsibilities of CanCon fall to you, Clint? Was this something that you wanted to do from the beginning? This is the 4th year now, or did somebody just elect you and tap you on the shoulder with a sword and say you are now the leader of CanCon? How'd you get into that?
So I had never been to CanCon before I was running an event there. And so I think, yeah.
Magro's just laughing. All right, go on.
I had planned to go in the last days of Fantasy, and then I had to move house, and it just didn't happen. Right. So, I think I saw something go up for events at CanCon in 2017. 2017, yes. Trying to figure the years out there. And I was talking with my co-heralds at that time, Jesse and Mark, and talking about AOS, and I sort of said if we don't do it, there won't be AOS there, basically. Mm-hmm. And I talked them into running it with me, because I'd clearly fixated on this idea and then run with it, which is a thing that I do that my wife hates.
Like all great ideas, you tunnel vision on it, and then you rope your friends into it, whether they want to or
basically,
not. Right? Like, okay.
Basically, yeah. They only helped me run it for 1 year. To let that be a clue. So basically, I just put my hand up because somebody had to do it.
Right.
Somebody had to run it, and I had sort of started running events just as Warhammer died and AOS. So the very first time I decided to run an event was the morning that the pictures of the Age of Sigmar starter box leaked. Mm-hmm. So we're there all ready to play an 8th edition Warhammer event, and everyone's looking at these pictures of these new Age of Sigmar models on round bases. And I kind of gave the event a weird tone. Let's just say that. So I sort of started ramping up running events locally you know, at the start of Age of Sigmar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, cool, we need to do something at CanCon. And the response was really awesome, considering, you know how early days it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had the first General's Handbook, though, which was pretty helpful. And, you know, we had folks like Anthony and Liam Showhammer, and that was their first, you know, it was your first tournament, wasn't it? Like, proper tournament?
It was actually my very first tournament. So I played Warhammer Fantasy back until I started Warhammer in the late days of 3rd edition, really moving into 4th edition. So I've been playing Warhammer since I was a child, but I've never been to a tournament. I've never been to an event, and CanCon Age of Sigmar was my very first tournament and event. And it happened because I had a bunch of friends, Deke, who harassed me to come in. Fun fact, it's interesting. So this was a part of my journey from hating Age of Sigmar to loving it. I despised Age of Sigmar. My very first experiences were at a Games Workshop store where there were no points, and the way they tried to create a balanced competition was based on War Scrolls and Wounds, which was a wonderful idea at the time. But I got to play a series of games with basically 3 units of free guild, like handgunners and swordsmen. And my equivalent, I went up against 4 bloodthirsters. I went up against some crazy, stupid shit, and I had a really bad time. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm out. But when the General's Handbook came in, my friends kind of went, look, let's go to CanCon. Let's give this a real shot. And I hadn't won a game of Sigmar. I won one game leading into CanCon, and that one pivotal event was the catalyst for something else for our whole community. So, and I just want to acknowledge one thing for Clint. For Clint to take on CanCon from where he lives, that's 1,100 kilometers. So convert that to miles, but that's how far this crazy man drives with tournament and resources to run an event that is well outside of his region.
Man, so like people were like, man, all right, that so like you had a real like commitment and drive her early on to do CanCon, and then you just really every year like we kind of pointed out, it's sort of just doubled and continued to grow.
Yep, I like at the start of Age of Sigmar, there was nobody talking about it, like locally. We had a bunch of podcasts in 8th, and then they all disappeared when Age of Sigmar came out. So there was nobody talking about it, nobody running decent sized events. You know, nobody. Well, there were people promoting it, saying that there's nobody is not correct, but there wasn't as big a push behind it. And I loved the game, and I really wanted to make it grow. So I started talking about it. I started running events for it, you know, and trying to get people from my local capital city to drive up the mountain to come play in my events, and started to try and really push. And, you know, so CanCon was a part of that push. And then there were other communities where you could see people doing stuff. And then CanCon was that first sort of meeting of a bunch of these different communities. You know, we had some folks from Brisbane, we had some folks from Sydney, the Canberra crew got behind it. We had some, I think, the first South Australian, a couple of people from Melbourne. Like, we had this first sort of meeting of all these different communities, and then everybody went back to their communities, and then worked feverishly away to grow it, so that the next year that we came back, we had doubled in size, because not only had sort of Games Workshop thrown some effort in behind Age of Sigmar, because that was around the time that their leadership changed and their attitude changed, right. Sort of in that year. But you had these people working away in their communities to really grow them, and then bring back one friend each, and that's pretty much what happened. You know, we had whole clubs turn up. Like, I think the following year, when we hit that 104 was when Measured Gaming turned up, you know, with their 10 people or whatever. And we were like, wow, this is awesome. You know, people are starting to really gel together, and you have this club movement to come to events and things like that.
So real quick, you played Warhammer Fantasy Battle as well, right? Like, and then then Clint. I know Coach did, but
Yeah.
So you played Warhammer
Yeah.
Fantasy Battle as well. You said you loved Age of Sigmar in those what I call the Dark Ages, like the pre-points era. Like what made this game really resonate with you that you did throw yourself as hard into it early? What was it that you just like you loved? Because most people, were like, this is the new. Like I've heard some people's take like, oh, this is the new thing, so fuck it, we'll play it. Like the sort of nonchalant, might as well play the new thing. But like, what made you to like go out and kind of champion the game?
It was hard. I'm not gonna lie, because I've played Warhammer since 6th edition. Everybody knows that my favorite character is Manfred, and he killed the world.
No.
But my second favorite character was Balthazar Gelt, and he got killed by Manfred. So I had a proper conflicted moment there. Don't worry.
Yeah.
No, look, the game. I played it a little bit before MoComp, and it was a bit rough. But once we had people in other communities putting together these systems, and you had a little bit of structure, it was really fun. I really enjoyed it because it was a very simple game to play.
Mm-hmm.
That was very interactive, and you could have loads of fun with it. And I had some folks in my local community here who had played fantasy, and the size of the armies put them off and things like that. Whereas with AOS, there was initially less models in the game and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was much easier to get them to play with, half as many models as they needed to. Like, I convinced one of my friends to rebase his entire army before he'd even played a game of Age of Sigmar. I had talked it up that much.
See, that's amazing. I don't know if you know, like, obviously the general you, the absolute vitriol around having to rebase an army is like one, it's not that bad, but like it's just like this thing that people on the internet, I still see every day. Well, it's probably cooled down to about every week or every month now. At least one post somewhere complaining about rebasing their army.
Or people steadfastly putting everything onto squares.
Yeah.
And okay, fine. And look, we catered to those people at CanCon for a while. We don't anymore. So we had a couple of years there where you could get away with squares blue tacked onto the appropriate size rounds and things like that, so that everyone was on a level playing field. Now, round bases is it. That is what you're playing.
Well, at some point,
you were very inclusive for people who wanted to play Ninth Age or Kings of War, or weren't quite ready yet to jump over.
I understand. It's a big thing to rebase an army. I rebased all my death. I understand how big a deal it is.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to push people into doing that straight up.
Right.
But over the years, we've just kind of tapered off that kind of support and said, well, now, it's only 5 years. It is 5 years? Hang on. What year are we?
It's about 5
It'll
years.
be 5 years in a couple of months.
We're going into
you've had time.
Yeah.
You have decided that you want to play this game, and you can rebase your army. So.
Yeah, I think right now I'm to the point where inclusive. On one hand, I want to strive to be as inclusive as possible. On the other hand, when it comes to squares versus rounds, it's kind of just a band-aid you just got to rip off at some point. And I think we've hit that period where it's now it's just rip the band-aid off. Just put your stuff on rounds now, please. In an LGS setting, I'm not gonna snivel about it. Go ahead, but once it's time to take them out into the wild and go to a tournament and stuff like that, it's we have at this point that's just part of the decorum of it all, the respect for the game. Have rounds, please. Have the correct rounds. Believer, thank you so much for those biddies there. So yeah, no, that's really cool that you kind of embraced it so thoroughly so early and really kind of championed it. When Coach here was just making fun of it the whole time, I assume, and just spitting.
What's that?
Spitting on Age of
Calling
Sigmar
everything
army.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was just the worst.
No, actually, I didn't. My initial journey was I played it, I tried it, I didn't like it. I stepped away and played Frostgrave for a good, say, 12 months, which is a Mordheim Dungeons and Dragons style skirmish game based around wizards, which was really, really, really fun game, and it kind of allowed me to reset. By the way, I also had it gave me an opportunity to kind of explore some new models, to play, to really playing Dungeons and Dragons at that stage. And then at that right time, when things kind of happened, I was able to jump in a much more positive environment. Because this is at a time where I only played one army. That was the Empire. I played the Empire for 15 years. I did a podcast with Clint back in the early days around the transition from fantasy to Sigmar. But for my army, which was the one that I identified with and I loved so much, I had nothing. I had no lore. I had no place in the mortal realms. And the moment that really kind of stood out for me was when they put out that video around the mortal realms and explained how the planets kind of worked, and how, not planets, but the realms kind of interacted with each other. And that was where, for me, someone with such a high reliance on map and place in the realms, I finally found something that I could clutch onto, as opposed to this fictitious free guild that at the time had no allegiance abilities. It had no lore. It was just this porting of, much like the Tomb Kings of the Bretonia. It's like, you're there, but you're not really cool. Go play Bloodbound at the time.
Well, like to real quick, I was just joking with you. You can tell he's really focusing on painting that model because my humor's going over his head. Everybody, no, we talked on it's been October, I think, is the last time you were on. This is a sweet conversion. You can't see this if you're listening in pure audio, but he's actually got the steam tank with the is that a gun hauler?
Yes, I've converted to steam tank gun haulers.
Yeah.
So
hell yeah. But no, you talked about, like, one of the things you really needed is, in addition to having that sort of tactile need of, like, the map and for things to have a physical place, you need that underdog story of, like, mankind sort of triumphing in the face of demons. Like, it's just a dude with a sword or a pistol and his, like, guts fighting a demon.
The game I play Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and I always play with the human. As cool as the orc is, as cool as the elf is, the dwarf, I love the underdog story. And for me, at that time, there just wasn't that story, and there was just no place for me at the time. And I think really in the last, say, 12 to 18 months, the narrative, and I think, Clint, you may even have seen this in my own hobby progression. I've found a place, and now I'm getting to explore that with conversions and kit bashing, and obviously got nominated for Coolest Army, and that's something that I would have never even strived for a few years ago. I think the year prior, Clint had pulled me up at CanCon to say, hey, you're one of the best armies, I want you for nomination. And I said no. I said, Clint, no, I don't even want to be up there. I'm here for gaming. And Clint actually talked me at least putting my army up. And that was because I just didn't have a place at the time. I was just playing the game. So
yeah, I think this last year, like, kind of going into I think our first rabbit hole off of this is this last year, I think a lot of people were able to find their identity in Age of Sigmar, specifically this last year, with all the tomes coming out. We got sort of the second iteration of a narrative sort of campaign style book telling us, hey, this is the world and there are things going on. I think Warcry has been absolutely pivotal for giving people a sense of space in Age of Sigmar. Like, the all points or the 8 point, this thing exists here, right? Cities of Sigmar saying, hey, this is Hammerhall, this is what it's like. Of course, we got Magro showing off the guns of Hammerhall tonight. But to actually give people, as much as I love the sort of blank canvas of Age of Sigmar for, like, inserting myself into the world, I think it's really important to give people, like, I call them sharp edges. Give them sharp edges to latch onto. And we finally got some, instead of a completely smooth surface that Age of Sigmar maybe was in the beginning. I wasn't personally there for the Dark Ages, but like, to actually give people some of these surfaces to grab onto has been really, really key, I think, for people getting into the game. And I think that's why we've seen not just CanCon growing, basically doubling in size. I think the game, it would be a conservative estimate to say in the last, I'm going to say 2 years, basically since AOS 2.0, the game's probably doubled from what it was before. And we can look at all the events, and a lot of the events across the globe are, probably about twice the size of what they were 2 years ago at the very least. Some more than others, right? And I bet that player base is just a mirror of that. That the player base itself that doesn't necessarily travel to tournaments, I pretty much assure you that that's probably doubled as well. So, go ahead.
You just have to look at in the Facebook groups and the hobby groups for all the different sort of either allegiances or whatever, and you see new people come in every day and they say, "Oh, I've just picked up this box and I've never done this before," and whatever, and that's like a couple of times a week. That probably happens in the death group, and you just so you go, okay, well, these people are coming from somewhere, and they may not never go to a tournament, but they'll play with their mates and whatever. And there's this people talk a lot about tournament play and player numbers and things like that, but there's as you say, there's an invisible community, that has sure to be growing in that time. So yeah, I reckon doubling is a good estimate.
I think doubling, probably more than that, to be honest. If you look at Whip Wednesday, for example, or the amount of battle reports that people are just filming, and it's just merely a lot of people are just filming their iPhone or their Android phone and piecing together a bunch of stories. The content of photos and videos and blogs and discussions has blown up. It's really blown up, and you look at forums like TGA again, just absolutely blown up because people, either tournaments or non-tournaments, are having a field day.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's really important that events like CanCon remain these bastions of sort of of goodwill and good sort of jumping off point for someone who wants their first tournament. And to that end, Clint, do you have unbelievable? Thank you so much for that follow there, Safeguard. Do you have a sort of like a method to your madness for like putting together a pack? Because I think a pack is one of those like maybe your opinion differs on packs entirely, but I think a pack is like a good way of saying, hey, this is what my event's about, right? Like, do you have something that when you go to write a pack, you go, this is a CanCon pack? Do you have that moment, or do you have a strategy involved in that?
Every pack I write is a progression, probably, of the first pack I ever wrote for Warhammer Fantasy. Mm-hmm. And so obviously there was some changeover once we came to Age of Sigmar, but I think that each pack I do every year builds on the pack from the year previous, because we try and keep CanCon sort of as vanilla as possible. So we don't have custom scenarios. We tend, we use realm rules, but we kind of tailor that experience. We don't sort of say, we allow all the realm artifacts and then the spells and all that sort of stuff, and we, but what I try and do is, I know that we have people from not just communities all over Australia, but we have that international element. We have people from New Zealand and Scotland and the US, and every region plays Warhammer slightly differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they all have different expectations. So I try and be as clear as I can in my pack around the expectations that I have, and they should have for CanCon. And because it is fairly by the book, that obviously makes it a lot easier. But we just have, we spell out, hobby expectations and gamesmanship expectations, and this is how we're going to do it, and so I try and be as clear as I can in the packs, and each year I kind of refine that further. Each year is sort of clearer than the year before.
Right. No, I think that's probably like one of the most important roles of a pack, is setting those expectations, saying, hey, this is the type of tournament, because you don't like, your tournament is going to be different from my tournament, is going to be different from Anthony's tournament or Coach's tournament. But that pack is a really good guide to a player going, okay, this is how this tournament's going to be a little bit different, or this is what I can expect going in. So if your pack is clean, it's concise, it tells them everything to expect successfully, even if it's not the exact tournament that I would run. It's still like, oh yeah, it checked the box. It said what it was going to be. It was what it was going to be. I can't complain because it says right here in the pack, this is what you expect. And so you've probably gotten a lot better at going, hey, at managing expectations, I suppose, through your pack, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Every year. I'm also conscious of the fact that my pack tends to end up in odd places. It's strange, but as we've sort of gotten bigger, parts of my pack turn up everywhere. So there's a line in my pack about not using High Elf Dragons as Magma Dragons, or using a Vargulf as a Morngul or something like that. And I've read that in player packs from like Northern Ireland and stuff like that. I'm like, hang on, I wrote that.
Is there a story behind why you wrote that in a pack, perhaps?
Just to stop cheap people, basically. Well, once again, it's setting expectations. It's like, yeah, that's cool. That might be cool at your local store. That's cool, but you're playing against people who might have travelled, 30 hours. You might be playing Joe from the States or whatever. He doesn't want to go, what's that Vargulf? And you go, no, it's a Mongol. Things like that. It's about setting expectations on what is an acceptable thing. But yeah, it's just that paragraph sort of turns up in odd places. So I know that, as the event's gotten bigger and gotten more attention, people are reading the pack and they're, and borrowing from it, and which is cool. Like, that is a huge compliment that they are borrowing parts from the pack. But I just that paragraph sticks out a lot, because I think that was in my first CanCon pack, and I've just never revised it because it's still, it still fits. So
that's fantastic. I like the little evolutions of packs. So there's like the Wapaka pack has a in its sort of FAQs, it's got the acceptable places to throw up, because of course someone has thrown up in the wrong place before, and so like they had to set that precedent for like losing sports score if you don't like throw up in the bathroom or a snowbank, right? Like, Brendan from Milwaukee scene, he does the Brew City Brawl here. His pack actually says you can't use a real turtle for your IDK turtle, and because someone threatened to bring a real turtle for IDK, it's like, no, you can't do this. And so I think the little like stories and the evolutions of some of that stuff is part of the character of the game. I think that's great. Yeah, so we got a chat gang real quick with all the hype train that's been going on. Y'all unlocked a couple of new emotes, so kudos to y'all. Thank you for being the best at Twitch by spending a bunch of money.
Pay to win, right? Pay to win.
That's right. That's what it's all about. My pack has the best secondaries. Tomb King Tristan is shouting off. So I've had oh, go ahead.
Can I add one thing just from my point of view for the player pack as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
So because I'm in the knee deep of building my players pack for Sydney GT and ready to release it. And I had two methodologies. One was not to recreate the wheel. If someone's already doing something that's wonderful, don't feel ashamed borrowing it. It's been done. You can learn from their mistakes. And, like Clint and I had a wonderful discussion, and I gave him some feedback around the painting scores at CanCon. I said, I think, you should open up a little bit more for the amount of points that you can generate. And he responded with, well, if only you ran a tournament that you could, apply your ideas. And while he was being a jerk, it's true. It's look at a player's pack and think, what's my spin on this? And, I have gloriously stolen from Dave for NashCon. I've stolen ideas from Domus for Midwest Meltdown. Mm-hmm. I've stolen ideas from Holy Havoc with Steve Herner. I've stolen ideas from Clint. And I think it's a wonderful way of bringing together some of the best. And I think I'm even stealing some ideas on the way. Oh, God, who was I speaking to? I've just had a mind blank around. There was a Bloodshed in the Shire did a really cool way of doing Best in Chaos, Best in Allegiance. So looking at some of the best packs, getting some exposure and thinking, if I want to create an experience for my players, does someone already have the rules that I really want? And do I bastardize it to make it my own? Mm-hmm. Some you can literally like lift and shift. Some you might want to rework. Mm-hmm. So like I've rewritten Domus's War Scroll for the monster of Gur. But some of it, it's just like, yep, I love how he did it. Just grab it.
Yeah.
So don't be ashamed of doing that, because we've now had 4 years of events and some very experienced tournament organizers who have put their heart and soul in these packs. So one, read it. Two, don't be ashamed to borrow from others.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of like riding on the backs of giants that happens in a hobby like Age of Sigmar. Like, for instance, just like looking up a video on how to do a painting technique. Vince is going to tell you how to like do non-metallic metals or something like that, right? Telling you how to do a technique for crackle bases. Who knows? Whatever it is. He's already made a bunch of the mistakes to be able to make that video, right? To acquire that knowledge. So like when it comes to like writing a pack, I've ran one event, I can call myself a TO. We've made mistakes that like we've learned from as we've sort of progressed the event, or as you've progressed your event. When you're borrowing from somebody else's pack with something you like, you're also benefiting from the experience that went into that pack as well. And so the net sort of water level of Age of Sigmar is just raising, and that rising water level is going to raise all boats, right? So, oh man. So I have a little question here that's just a random curiosity, because I am not a weeb, but I've got to ask it. We'll go ahead and throw the emote up in chat there. So Japan actually has, I don't know if you follow any like the Japanese hobbies, and this is to you, chat gang, as well, and you dear viewers, or you dear listeners. They go hard on the hobby aspect, but they don't necessarily have a ton of tournaments. Do you find that you get like a lot of like, because Japan isn't super far away from Australia relative to like some other places. Do you actually like get like a sort of a Japanese influx to CanCon or anything like that? Have you noticed that going on? No, not yet.
No, not yet. Well, I'm sure it'll happen. Like, just as their scene grows, and as the international scene sort of
cross-pollinates.
Cross-pollinate was the word I was looking for, but I just could not think of it. Yeah, as that happens, I think it'll happen. It'll happen for sure. But I think, they're 8 hours away on a plane. I think.
10. I think it's 10.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm 2 hours closer. It's fine. So, but yeah, I'm sure that will happen. Because I know the reverse is true. Like I think there are some Australians that go to Japan and have been to some of these events and things like that. So,
well, I've heard Magro talking a little bit about like you've got a very, in terms of food wise, you got a really like cross. You've got a really diverse palette of meals that you pull from when you're throwing together some food. There, Magro, and I think you mentioned some Japanese dishes one time.
Well, love a good ramen, but talking to the guys who run the Rising Sun GT, which is the Japanese tournament, as those, I believe there might be a bit of a language barrier in regards to the locals versus foreigners who attend. However, that is growing, and I'm hearing wonderful things, and I see wonderful hobby that's coming out of some of our Asian communities. Mm-hmm. I think there will be a day, I don't know when that day will be, where we will get not just New Zealanders coming, but our Indian friends and our Chinese friends and our Japanese friends, and I think that's the wonderful thing, that as this world expands, I'm learning more about the French Age of Sigmar. I'm learning more about the German Age of Sigmar, the Spanish Age of Sigmar, and I think it's something we can all learn from each other and share from.
We have a member here in Chat Gang. He's in rather frequently. He's like been educating me on the German scene a lot, like during like some of my hobby streams and stuff. And I'm just like, my mind is like kind of blown by hearing how like some of the similarities, but also like how they've hated Fire Slayers in Germany, I guess, for like 1 calendar year already, and to hear like little things like that, we're like, thinking that like, we step back and we see some of these trends and some of these these statistics, and you go, these are like oftentimes global statistics we're like looking at, and seeing how the local meta or like the regional metas kind of differ. We had a ton of Nagash during the Nagash plus Grimghast Reapers, probably more than any other region, and a lot of it came down to just like Brendan and people like either like sort of like being gamers and trying to beat him with his own list, or or saying, hey, he's really great player in our local scene. We're going to try to like take his list and win as well. So you see some of that like sort of regional influence, and I just find it utterly fascinating as like a social game to see the sort of social, cross pollination between tournaments and between scenes.
And I remember when I attended Blood and Glory in 2017, and this was the Fire Slayers Perfect Storm, where their War Scrolls got changed to be better. They got cheaper in points, and they got their start collecting box, or that was it got easier to buy. I remember this crazy storm, and Blood and Glory was won that year, I believe, by Fire Slayers. And I remember going, holy shit! When I get back to Australia and CanCon, oh my god, Fire Slayers is going to be everywhere. I've never played against Fire Slayers. And 2 years later, they're still pretty low key. So it's interesting how you're right, the meta does change and what people jump onto versus what sounds like the boogeyman, but actually really isn't.
Yeah, or like if you the power of like actually playing rabbit hole number 2, take a drink. The power of like actually playing against a boogeyman and not just the one game, but like getting your nerves out the way, playing against somebody in like a local meta, and just sort of learning that they might have some weaknesses you didn't expect. For instance, Slaanesh, like I just wasn't as afraid of Slaanesh this last year as I had been of like Flesh Eater Courts, because I was interested in playing that army, and so like I played a couple proxy games, like knew the army didn't need me. First of all, I'm like, okay, Slaanesh doesn't need me to play it. I'm gonna go back to like running my Beast of Chaos as Beast of Chaos. But like to like have that sort of like gain that insider knowledge of beginning to play it, but then I also played against it a fair amount to where I'm like, the internet keeps telling me to shoot their heroes, and I'm like, I find that killing their battle line is way better, like and to just like if you feed the boogeyman, it only gets stronger, right?
Well, leading into CanCon, I went OBR hunting.
Oh yeah,
I found every OBR player I could find, and I challenged them. I grudged them. So much so that when I was at a local one-day tournament, in Game 3, there was a Petrifix Nagash, and I called him out. I said to the tournament organizer, can you please let me play this person? I want a round 3 grudge. And they looked really weird at me because I was 2-0 at that stage. And then that guy only had 1-1, and he's like, no, I'm not going to let you because you might win the prize. And I'm like, the prize. I don't care about the prize. I want to play Petrifix Nagash leading into CanCon. And you're right, leading into the boogeyman, just getting experience. I played Liam, and he had a really strong catapult build with his OBR. And I gave him first turn. I said, shoot at me. I said, show me what you got. I said, I don't care what you're going to do. This is for lols. Hit me. And then I'm going to see, based on what damage you do, how I can respond.
Yeah. And that's not to say that the boogeyman aren't powerful. They achieve boogeyman status for a reason, right? But you're going to be a lot more versed going into a big field like CanCon if you fight the boogeyman, right? Like you actually, because so often the reason I think we call them boogeymen is so perfectly poetic to me, because so often the boogeyman's not real, right? And there's nothing under your bed, and so we have these like big boogeyman moments in the game. I'm currently balancing Tzeentch right now in my head, where I'm like, I know I have this apprehension that a lot of people have in the game right now. But like I also know that like two of my favorite people and people that have actually been on RantCast, they're really loving their Tzeentch armies, and they've been on board the Tzeentch train for a while before this new boogeyman status. Well, new boogeyman status. They were the old boogeyman, but we'll revitalized boogeyman. We got like a 6-month cooldown from Tzeentch being the best army in the fucking game, right? So it's all right that they're back now. 6 months is enough. For things to not change.
That's a regional thing too, though.
Right.
That's a regional thing too, though. Like in Australia, Tzeentch didn't have their second, like their thing over here.
Mm-hmm.
They were really big when that first book came out, and then they kind of tapered off. And then we didn't have the.
Okay, go ahead.
We didn't really get the Zangor build. We didn't get the Change Host resurgence.
You didn't get the endless spell spam resurgence, right? Like.
No. I'm sure there was players out there playing it. Please don't at me because I've ignored you. But like, we didn't have like we didn't have that resurgence of the chain shows thing and everything that other communities are talking about. And then obviously with this new book, everyone's like, oh gosh, Zinch is back again and stronger. And in 3 months' time, we'll be talking about something else.
Yeah,
it's just the way it goes.
Yeah, elves. I'm not excusing any sloppiness with rules or design or anything like that, but I do think that we give some of these boogeymen power by just being afraid of them. Like if you walk up to the table and you think you've already lost just seeing my army, if I'm gaming a certain kind of way, I can really prey to your fears as think about the poker mentality of gaming, right? If you're betting afraid, I can take advantage of you, right? If you think that I'm the boogeyman and you're afraid to engage, a 20 block of Mortek guard, even with your best pieces that can actually beat them, I'm going to play to that fear, right? If you only empower me by being afraid of my army. And so I think that whilst, again, oftentimes boogeyman status, there's a grain of truth in that. There's something that is imbalanced that we look at and we grab it and we go, this is a problem. But you look at that problem and then you stop trying to look for solutions. And this is something I've been cautioning. You're actually in a basic form of fight or flight mode in that when you're angry at an army or you're angry at a book or angry at a release. You're in a basic fight or flight mode. You don't realize it because it's not a lion about to pounce on you. But you do go into that part of your brain that stops logicking the problem. And that's something I like to caution against, just as a sort of mental health Age of Sigmar moment there. So you're welcome, everybody, for rabbit hole number 2 of the night. I guess, but that does segue nicely. Go on.
There's a difference between building your list or going into an event knowing that it's likely you're going to face something because that's what's around.
Right.
Or just, as you say, being afraid, playing afraid. There's a big difference there. Mm-hmm. So...
Yeah, there's a big difference there. So, but speaking of this sort of boogeyman segue we ended up on, what type of field did you end up finding at CanCon? Did you get a nice diverse meta? You were one of the events that did allow the new book, as I recall, right? You did allow new Zinch and new KO. Yeah, so
for better or worse.
For better or worse, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously people have their opinions on that. I'm not interested on you having to justify it. Honestly, you don't to me. Or anybody else for that matter. But you did allow it. So hey man, live by the sword, die by the sword. So they were there. Well, I guess were Zinch and KO prominent both, or just did you see a little bit more of the boogeymaners?
There were 9 Zinch players, which was great. Just the number thing. There was a bunch of KO.
Well, KO's kind of a
Zinch obviously won, right?
Right. We know Zinch won, and OBR took second, right? So
yeah, but even the OBR build was something bizarre. So it's the OBR build was not your standard thing. So look, we saw Zinch around. There were as many as there were up the top. They were down the bottom as well.
Okay.
KO sort of filtered down a little bit further. They were sort of around the middle. But I think overall we had a really great spread across all of the Grand Alliances and a bunch of the allegiances. Yes, it wasn't 25%, 25%, a quarter each. But some years we've had, maybe 10% of the field being destruction or 10% of the field being death. It was not that heavily weighted thing. It was roughly
a good
even.
Spread. Yeah, good.
It was a good spread. There were some standout sort of allegiances that people took, but even in the top 10, it was sort of scattered around a little bit.
Okay. Coach, I know you've got some numbers because this kind of you've been.
He's sitting there waiting with numbers.
He wants to I see him just shaking in his chair, just ready to talk.
No, I'm here to help. So what I saw from the list review was it was relatively an even spread when it came to Grand Alliances. Order had the strongest of them. So 78 lists came from Order, 45 came from destruction, 46 came from death, 56 come from chaos. The most popular builds were Cities of Sigmar with 19 lists, Ogre Moor Tribes 18, Ossiarch Bone Reapers 18, Deepkin at 15, Skaven at 13, Fire Slayers 10. Go down the list: Ironjaw, Stormcast, Zench, Slanesh, Seraphon, Khorne, Sylvaneth.
So Zinch were
It just
at
rolls on.
Zinch were at 9, which as I recall is his number. And
Yeah.
Skaven were at 13, which is their number. That's
Skaven
really
at 13, and
love that.
Slanesh was at 8, and Khorne was at 8, and Nurgle was at 7. So Slanesh ruined it for us. Otherwise, all of the Chaos Gods hit their number.
Should have just rejected a couple of lists.
There you go.
No, you needed to add more, don't you? What's Slanesh's
6.
number?
Slanesh is 6.
Yeah, it's 6 for
Oh,
Slanesh.
I just imagine it was 69.
Well,
2 more lists.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we're in trouble if we have 69 Slanesh lists coming.
So you had a pretty good spread actually. A pretty diverse field. Just talking a little bit. So Zeech did end up taking it. Taking it all. I since I am a death is best type player. I want to talk a little bit about the OBR list that ended up winning it. What was the gentleman's name? Do you recall? I should have done this for part of my research. I did not.
The guy who came second?
Yes.
Josh Carroll.
All right, so Josh, he was actually bringing a murder ponies heavy list. So I need to share a little personal anecdote. The first list I ever built when I got my Ossiarch Bone Reapers book, when I was just messing around with lists, was Cavalos Lance plus Ballistari list. Right, that was the first list I ever built. The second list I ever built was Nagash plus all the murder ponies. So I did it as a meme because I was joking with Haywo that I was going to play Beastclaw Raiders except with death models. And I had found a way to run I think it was 23 models was what my list was. It was Nagash and a bunch of ponies and then a couple heroes. So I was really snickering when I saw that he had that a list that I thought was a joke had actually some real legs to it and had won. Not that I think Nagash is a joke, by the way. That's not the read. I think he's actually fucking great. That's what I ran at PACA was Nagash plus more Mortek guard than ponies. So I think you're going to see that list a lot more, especially now that someone's taken second with it. But just from talking to Josh a little bit on Twitter, he said he took it because he knew you were going to be playing he knew he was going to be playing in Gairan, and so he was really aware of the pack. I guess is just the best way of saying it. He was very aware of the pack when he had built that list. So.
I think that's what you have to be in order to do well at an event that size. You have to play it to the pack, and so we tell people early on you're playing in Gairan, and so people go, really good Emerald Life Swarms, and I'll have these spells. So, and if they write their lists to take advantage of that, that's fine. I don't think that's a problem at all.
No, if the pack is if it's information that everyone has, then it's information everybody has, right? That's one of the things about that Age of Sigmar, I think makes it so great is we play a game of what is called quote unquote perfect information. You know my whole list and you know everything in my army. When I walk up to the table and I hand you my list and I go, this is everything in my army, right? All my rules, all their abilities, all their movement. You can whip out a phone, check in the app. You know that. We play a game of theoretically perfect information. Now, obviously, there's stuff with FAQs. There's some nuance to it, but for the most part, you know everything in the list, and the pack can be an extension of that too. Painting requirements. Going into a tournament, we tell you those too. It's not just on a quote unquote gamer side of things. Your expectations as a sportsmanship. Or as a sportsman, as well. Show up on time. If the event pack has a requirement of early list submission, hey, it's worth 5 points of your sports vote, or your sports score. All that stuff is information going in. The gameplay part of it too. So if you're saying, hey, you're gonna be in Gairan, and you go, I'm gonna bring Emerald Life Swarm to really take advantage of it or whatever, then boom. I think that's just part of it. It's knowing your painting expectations, army expectations, narrative expectations, whatever the expectations are set. That's part of that having a strong pack, having a good pack. setting those expectations, and the people who are going to do the best are the people who are going to prepare the best, right? Getting in your games, making sure you know your list, making sure you know your army, playing against, going out and headhunting Ossiarch Bone Reapers, right? If you know you're going to play them because there's 10% of the field, or wherever they've settled in after the most recent stats show, like you're gonna play. Chances are you might play them, right? Like, your chances are you're gonna play Maw tribes. I mean, just go AOS coaches. By the way, I've got to do a shout out to you, even though you're on my show right now. Your meta show is I really love it. You've been doing this monthly now for about 3 months. It's one of my favorite bits. So
shout out to me.
You and AOS reminders actually. Davis Ford kind of helping you out with that. Yeah, like I know going into a tournament, okay, I'm probably gonna play ogres. A little bit ago, I knew I was gonna play Slanesh. Like knowing that and just getting in your games, preparing against it, especially if it's a boogeyman, that's just all part of preparation. Prepping your list, on a basic level, going, you know what, I don't like catapults, or you know what, I don't like harvesters. I'm not gonna put them in my list. Getting that information in, figuring that stuff out. That's going to help you prepare and have cleaner games and have a more fun time. Honestly, if you're doing less mental work the day of because you've prepared well, you're going to have more fun. You're going to be able to hit that sweet spot of having a conversation at the table with the game on in the background. Essentially, that's where I love to live my life at the AOS table, is knowing my list so well that I measure, move, and I'm just talking to my opponent the whole time. Like, I love games like that.
Yeah. If you want to do well at a tournament, the questions that I was asking myself from my list and some of the challenges that I was trying to explore was, how does my army handle Ossiarch Bone Reapers? How does it handle a heavy Mortek Guard build? How do I handle a catapult build? How do I handle a Nagash build? How do I handle a turn 1 charging Iron Jaws or Ogre Maw tribes with Stonehorns? How do I handle Skaven Mortal Wound shooting? How do I handle Stormcast or some of the movement shenanigan armies that can kind of drop from the sky, or Nighthaunt with their teleporting? And asking those questions of my army meant that I could potentially make the best list that I could for the draw that I was hoping to achieve. Mm-hmm. Now, did I achieve and did I fight all of the meta armies? No, but I was well prepared for when I did fight them. I did play Bone Reapers. I did play the Ogre Maw tribes. I did play a Skaven list. So I had some answers.
This is actually a pretty good transition into sort of what I would call the second half of the show here, which is the player perspective, Coach. So you attended CanCon to play. Mm-hmm. So you played your 6 rounds. You brought your gorgeous, I don't know if y'all got to see this, but your gorgeous display board with the sort of two levels to it, where you had the like surface level cities, cityscape sort of thing, and then you had the sub level of like the Skaven underneath the city. Absolutely gorgeous display board. One of my favorite I've ever seen personally. So kudos to that, man. But yeah, I saw you talking about some of your games, sort of like cursory, like just sort of like in the lead up to CanCon, practicing with your city's list. I think I saw you actually talking about your game against Liam. With the so you're talking, you shared your catapult
with
story early. Yeah, you shared your catapult story early, but you'd also kind of shared that journey on the internet. So you put in a lot of reps. How did it pay off? How did it turn out? How did CanCon go for you?
Yeah, it went really well. So my road to CanCon started after Sydney GT. So I run an event that happens in the middle of October. So the benefit and the curse is that I get to avoid armies on parade, and I get to avoid what's it called, the Ever Chosen, because at that same time, and Clint can appreciate this, whenever you're running a tournament, your personal hobby disappears. You are constantly building terrain. You are talking to sponsors about potential prizes. You are doing plaques. You're putting out social media posts. Your life is dedicated for a good 6 months at probably minimum preparing for your tournament. So personal hobby disappears, and I never get to enter anything else. So the moment that kind of came finished up, I decided I wanted to go hard. This was my armies on parade. this was my ever chosen. I was going in to have a great weekend. My goal is always to win more than I lose. That's a personal goal. I don't want to win CanCon, but at the same time, I still want to have good games and I want to do well. So how did I do that? I guess I had to divvy up, right? Because my display board, I was going all in on my display board, and that was taking a lot of my time, a lot of my effort. I was applying new techniques that I'd never done before, from the resin water to a lot of foam core work. At the same time, trying to build my list, and I was constantly evolving my list based on the interactions that I was having. So my very first couple of games, I played some Iron Jaws armies, and my free guild guard just basically collapsed. So I was playing Halo Heart for Cities of Sigmar, and I had two interactions where I had one or two more crushes with a bunch of pigs turn one charge me before I had any benefits on my army. And basically the game was over before it started. Well, certainly my juicy center of wizards were kind of getting collapsed. So I had to ask myself, how do I handle this army? So constantly I was testing and finding opponents to test a theory and kind of work out how my army was going to work.
This is list science. This is applied list science here is what you're doing.
It was. And, I fell into the trap very early on, everyone in Hello Heart was talking about the bridge. I'm like, I'm going to take the bridge. And I dropped it in November. I'm like, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my style. And it was just this constant evolution. And then I found the list that I really enjoyed, and it did well. I won 4 games out of 6, so I was very happy with that.
Did the real hot question though is did you beat the Bone Reapers and the Maw tribes?
I did. So my first game was against Seth Cook, the goon boss himself on Twitter. That was a grudge, and he had 3 stone horns, and they all charged me, and I did beat him.
Okay.
So that was awesome. And then my last game was against Corey from Measured Gaming, who had 60 Mortec Guard with Arcan the Black and a bunch of other dudes. And I did win that one as well. So putting in my reps, I got an appreciation of what things can and can't do.
Yeah, beautiful. So the prep paid off. You actually mentioned something about experimenting with like techniques for your terrain, for your display board and stuff. Clint, on the TO side, have you found that like you've had to refine the process of your terrain? Have you done any like experimentation or evolving that to get ready for such a big event?
So this year we sort of remade a bunch of, I chose to remake a bunch of things because I'd always made hills a certain way, and I'm like, no, I don't like how this looks. So I went and remade a bunch of hills, and my wife was quite annoyed at me. But but every year I kind of learn something new, or I've picked up something, because I will, throughout the year, I'll watch YouTube and watch tutorials, and Mel, the terrain tutor, has an exhaustive YouTube library of techniques, and I go, I'll give that a try, and where he's making 4 pieces, I've got to make 40. So I try and pick techniques that I know I can do in bulk and things like that. So yeah, every year I try and test something else out.
That's really cool that so like it's sort of like you're evolving like the tables that your players are playing on as they're sort of parallel to you evolving their techniques for their own army and their own little personal displays. I just think again this is that raising water level thing. It raises all boats. The events look better. The armies look better. The players, are then just because they're deeper and more immersed. I think they're having a greater time too. Yeah, awesome. So I'm gonna challenge you here, Magro. I know you're committing a lot of your right brain to the hobby right now, but can you paint for me a picture with words? Going to CanCon, what that day 1, 2, 3, not necessarily the games, but just I'm a player. What are my expectations? What is the ideal holiday to CanCon? Do you think from the player side? What is that like? Where does that begin?
Yeah, good question. So CanCon starts before CanCon. that's surprise. If anyone's been to a major tournament, again, Blood and Glory, I've had the pleasure going to Adepticon. I'm sure it's no different to Midwest Meltdown. The tournament starts before the tournament. So I was
You
very
keep saying that, it doesn't make any sense.
Clint,
I know what you mean.
It's called Context and Backstory, and now that you appreciate where I'm at, I'm going to take you to where I was. Let me take you to sales school instead of coming down to like a hot tin roof shed playing Warhammer with a bunch of sweaty dudes. So CanCon started for me at least on the Thursday, which was the day that we traveled down before the day. And the reason we came down the day before, so CanCon, the actual tournament, was on Saturday, Sunday. On the Friday, we had two key events. Vince Venturella was running a painting workshop. That was an all-day painting workshop that I had the pleasure of joining. But at the same venue, at the same time, there was a traditional, well, the second iteration of what's called the Trans-Tasman Cup, which was a team tournament or a one-on-one between Australia and New Zealand. So last year, there was 5 Australians versus 5 New Zealanders, and they fought one game to see who was the better country. And then this year, that expanded to 9 on 9.
So for Americans, the relationship between like New Zealand and Australia is a lot similar to the relationship we have with like Canada, where like it's like a big brother little brother sort of, like you make fun of each other, but at the end of the day, it's this there's a camaraderie there, and I think that I've seen a lot of that, and I've heard stories about it.
If anyone messes with your little brother, you're gonna fuck shit up. You will not deal with anyone picking on your little brother.
Right. But you'll still call them Kiwis and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, we take the piss against we tease each other, but if anyone else teases them, then you're in trouble.
Right.
So yeah, no, absolutely no different. So they had a 9 on 9 tournament, which Dan from AOS Shorts was I guess hosting and running. While I was at the painting workshop, and you might have seen a funny meme where, well, not even a meme, it was a post between me, Dan, and Vince Venturella, all looking at the LVO reveals that happened at the end of his painting workshop. And so, you're going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say Magro, and I thought you were going a different route with the meme. Polo.
Something dank that you've seen.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say that another reason you go down on the Friday is hopefully you come down to help Clint, because Paul Clint is setting up CanCon at the same time as well, so everyone can come in and play on Saturday. But we also have, again, the second iteration that Michael from Doom and Darkness had set up a very informal, casual barbecue where a lot of us are staying at this centralized location. It's like cabins where you have 6 or 8 people sharing a cabin. And there's a whole bunch of cabins. So what we do is we organized a Friday night, basically got food catered for, and just drinks and casual conversation. And, the Honest Wargamer was there. We had, everyone coming together and just having an absolute ball, chatting to each other, getting to introduce themselves. And that really kicks on into the actual tournament, because you've started to build relationships and friendships, I guess, over time. And it's also an opportunity for the international communities and also the domestic communities to come together in one spot to talk.
That's really cool. Yeah. There's a similar vibe, I think, that happens at Adepticon. This is why you don't want to be painting in your hotel room the night before the tournament, because you miss out on some of this great stuff.
Some of my favorite moments at Adepticon were the casual, Chuck Moore taking me out to this very Philadelphia-style restaurant or takeaway joint on, I think it was a Saturday night. Stone Monk Gamer doing his Tale of Four Warlords at 1 o'clock in the morning in the hall. Some people would bring casual beers. Meth, we went out to dinner, you, me, Joe, we all kind of went out to a random restaurant to eat. It's these little moments where you kind of catch up with people and you get to understand the internet personalities or even just people you don't get to normally hang out with in these casual environments that make the event. It makes it more from just Warhammer playing to the friendships that continue to build over time.
Right. And then so you do all that, and then you end up at this tournament, and as you said, as you said, Clint, earlier, it's a converted like hangar. So
yeah.
So what's that like stepping into this? Is it still this like expansive, like high ceilinged sort of area, or?
Yeah. It's they've converted a little bit, like put carpet in and things like that. It's not a hot tin shed. People call it a hot tin shed, but it's not quite like that. That's not doing it any.
It's also not a hotel. It's
no, it's not a hotel, but yeah. So you've got this. You walk in and it's nice high ceilings, and it's just huge, a huge area, and there's multiple pavilions that are like that, filled with all sorts of gamers and stuff like that. Like it's a really cool. It's a really cool thing, actually. I think if just walking in on a Saturday morning when everything's sort of set up and there's just the TOs that go in first, and it's like this weird sort of calm before the storm feeling as it's like huge area, it's all set up, everything looks schmick, and you're just like, right, in half an hour this is going to change a lot.
Well, then
you just
go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh no! So then, do all the war games happen then, like in the one big like stretch, and you got you're divvied up a little bit along the way, or are you partitioned off?
There's a couple of different, like there's multiple rooms, there's multiple pavilions,
okay.
that are essentially separate hangars.
Okay.
So, but within your area, there's blocks, and then there's like pathways between them and things like that. So they're not partitioned as such, but they're sort of cut off from each other by walkways and stuff like that. So that and because it's open to the public, you have people come in and walk around and have a look at your stuff.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. A lot of vendors as well, so there's a lot of cool people who sell bits, they sell board games. As Clint mentioned, it is a very popular public event as well, so they have a lot of board games as well, so people come in and you can hire board games, you can pick up board games, lots of FLGSs are there selling very heavily discounted merchandise. There's a wonderful bring-in buy, so you can go in and people can sell their wares and you can pick up some amazing deals as well. So it's a great event. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Well, oh man. I just this is for me. CanCon is it's kind of like my bucket list international event for me. I can't fully put to words, so I was hoping you gentlemen could come on RantCast and help me put it to words why I have this drive to try to make it to CanCon personally.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Regardless if you can come to CanCon or not, a lot of what we're talking about today are shared experiences across all of the major events, whether it's South Coast GT, whether it's Blood and Glory, whether it's going to be something in France, something like the ETC. Obviously, we do it in Australia better than everyone else. But if you've never been to a major tournament and you're now thinking about going to one, I would highly recommend getting out there and experiencing this yourself. CanCon is the pinnacle, is number one. However, everyone else runs amazing events, and you will have the same type of fun with us. And just answer Tomb King Tristan. He asked, basically, does it make New Zealand awesome? The answer is yes, because they've beaten Australia 2 years in a row.
Oof.
So they are the reigning undisputed champions of Age of Sigmar at CanCon. And they won bloody CanCon as well. Jimmy Page won CanCon, so and they won my event, bloody hell too. Sean Bates won my event, so do we even play Warhammer in Australia? If you want an easy beat, come down locally. Come to Australia. Fucking hell. Although our Scottish friends didn't have nearly as much luck as our Kiwis.
Right. That's fantastic, man.
Maybe put that in the advertising, Clint. If you want an easy game of Warhammer, come to Australia. Come to CanCon.
There you go. Another another bit of advertising. See, I just like I like the camaraderie that is so apparent, and I think there's a lot of it in Age of Sigmar abroad. Just But for whatever reason, there's that like, I don't know, when you have the first event televised in CanCon this year is for a WWE style tag, like belt. That's just my jam. Yeah, like.
We got to give shout to Joe Pagano as well and the Dwellers Below for making that happen. So, they did an amazing job to hype that. And something that's common in our community that may not be common in others is this thing called a round one grudge. Or as Joel McGrath from Measured Gaming would say, it's a play date. There's no real grudge. There's no real beef. There's no real salt. It's just two people who haven't played each other for a while, or maybe from different regions, setting up that first game. And, thanks for Clint allowing us to do that. But also it was great to see people just throw themselves in and really hype that matchup.
Yeah. Yeah. Clint,
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was just about to say that the Joe Randy matchup, that wasn't taken to 11, that was taken to 35. Like, it was just ridiculous. But it was also great as well. Like, to see them get their walk-ins and all that sort of stuff. Like, it just added so much spectacle to the event. So
Yeah. So New Zealand whooped Australia's ass, and America came down there and whooped some ass too. So it's just like you said, it is easy beats. Like, it's just.
look, if you don't grudge Randy and then claim that you're better than the rest of Australia, you're just like, that's like challenging me to a running race and then saying you're faster than everyone else in Australia. Like, yeah.
Give Tomb Kings a battle tome and then we'll reconsider the matchup.
Sorry, Randy is awesome and he gets better every event he plays. But we'll agree he's no 5-game, wonder. So
I mean, he was on Tomb Kings, right? Like, he was actually on.
Yeah, he doesn't
quote
play
unquote
anything else.
mixed death. Yeah.
Not like that Tristan guy who is flaky with Tomb Kings.
Yeah, he defected to Cities of Sigmar.
Yeah, what a flake.
Wow.
Yeah, it just real quick. So you're actually going to be bringing a little bit of the Australian heat up to the Midwest, this year, Coach. I
am. Yeah.
What's the tune?
Am I hype?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm coming to Midwest Meltdown, so I'll be coming down and I'll be round one grudging Warsoren, a friend of the channel, an awesome human, and we're gonna have a good game.
It's his first tournament, so it's on you to show him. He's been in Chat Gang as long as anybody else. A strong supporter of my show and some others out there. And we all talk about how great Age of Sigmar tournaments are. The pressure is on you, Coach, to show him what we're all about, I think.
Listen, last year I got beaten by a 13-year-old girl at CanCon. I'm sure Warsoren is going to have a wonderful event.
It wasn't... All right. Awesome. Clint, you look like you're holding on to something there.
Nothing, it's all good.
Well, actually, that probably brings up something as well, is that we do have a 13-year-old girl, now a 14-year-old girl, who's played CanCon 2 years in a row as well. So her father plays in the event. Her mother plays Blood Bowl and things like that. But to have not only females playing at the tournament, and there were a whole bunch of females playing, but also having a child is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
It's so cool that, one, the dad can trust all of us to hang out with his daughter for 2 days in a row, but two, that she can walk away, have an amazing experience. And then she came to my event, Sydney GT. She comes to other events. She's really grown from her experience back of last year. So if a 13-year-old girl can come and have a wonderful time, it just kind of shows the events that Clint is running.
Yeah. I think that's a good. I think it's something we should be aspiring to as like ambassadors of the game is to help build some diversity, because it's not just for like old neckbeards like myself. I think I think that Age of Sigmar, just like Dungeons and Dragons, we kind of saw. I think Dungeons and Dragons had its like big period of like growth onto like more of a little bit of a larger stage through Stranger Things, which we made Stranger Things jokes at the onset of the show, and and Critical Role. I think Age of Sigmar is primed. I don't think we'll ever be, you know, this massive undertaking, but I think that there's some popular appeal to our game that could bring in you know, a little bit more of a diverse crowd to like a safe space. Quite frankly, I mean, I use gaming to escape a lot of reality, right? And I think that that's pretty appealing. My daughter's already showing as much, if not more, interest in Age of Sigmar than my son is. You know, she'll pick up my models. She started stashing them now, so I got to be careful of like leaving stuff like this up on my shelf, because she'll come in, she'll grab it, and she'll put it in her backpack. So, and then go hide it downstairs. So yeah, sorry.
I will say on the diversity front, you know, we do have a good representation. Question is potentially encouraging and how do we bring more from the paint into the gaming. But at a local level, from a hobby perspective, we have, in my opinion, wonderful engagement, and that will just continue to grow over time.
Yeah, not a whole lot of gatekeepers in Age of Sigmar when it gets right down to it. I think that's kind of born from, to bring it back, you know, Clint, early on when you were championing the game so hard, just saying, hey, come play the game with us, right? It wasn't this big like, oh no, but you can't come play with us, 12-year-old girl. You know, like it was everyone can play with
everyone.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Every year, I think we have more and more female players at CanCon, and you know, one of our Masters level players, Gemma from the Failed Charge, you know, she's attended 2 Masters and been invited to 3. Like, they're not like female gamers are an integral part of our scene. Yeah. And there are more and more every year, more and more every month, and it's really great. And I think some scenes don't have that as much, but it's good to see that it's on the switch around and it's growing. And I'm happy that Australia is, I don't want to say leading the way, but like we're at the forefront of that with trying to make sure that we're accepted. You know, we're encouraging everybody to come play, and we're very inclusive. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so
can I just add one more thing to that?
Absolutely.
Clint does a wonderful job as well. I feel like half the time I'm here talking about Clint and how amazing he is, because it is true. One of the cool things that he does is go on. Mate, you clip this, save this will be the last time. But one of the really cool things that Clint does with CanCon is he runs this narrative bingo, where basically there's a whole bunch of about 20 objectives that you can achieve, and much like a bingo scorecard, that you know that even if you're not there to win CanCon and you're not there to crush face, you've got some wonderful hobby awards to achieve that have some wonderful prizes and trophies associated to, as well as narrative things that allow you to explore your games and takes the pressure off just winning and losing. There really is something for everyone. And I know there's a lot of people that come to the event just to get 5 or 6 games of Warhammer and to explore things like the narrative. You know, from cosplaying all the way down to different and random wonderful narrative pieces.
That's awesome. So it's an actual like a bingo card in your pack?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And you cross them off, and if you get 5 in a row, you pop it into a box and can win stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Simple things like you know, allowing people to go back and do something they've forgotten, or doing, you know, 3 damage on an arcane bolt. You know, things that are quite easy to achieve, and there are different pathways to doing it. But again, it just kind of shows you there is something for everyone at this event. It's not just about who can crush the highest amount of face.
Yep. Talking in character for a game, I'm sad that I don't get to see people do that, because it would just be great. You know, people pretending to be an orc for their entire game. Like, I want to see that. I want to see those gamers, because that's people having fun, like with their Warhammer, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I wore pantaloons all weekend. I had 2 different sets of pants.
And I'm still in therapy about that. So, like, because it was just pantaloons and nothing else. That was the problem. Nah. Nah, I'm kidding.
Oh man. So yeah, I guess real quick then, is there any last digital soapbox moment, whether it's about CanCon or Age of Sigmar in general, either of you'd like to hop on here before we close it out? Do you have something that you've just been needing to yell at the world, Clint?
I have my own podcast to do that from, so but basically, if you're thinking about coming to CanCon next year, definitely do that. It will be on the 23rd and 24th of January, so book your flights now. And if you're coming from overseas, shoot me a message, because we will make sure there is a spot for you.
All right. Are you going to make it 300?
No, I have already promised my wife that it will not grow this year. So our max is 240.
All right. Are you going to make it 240 then? Are you going to hit all 240?
Look, so we sold 240 tickets and we had a wait list, and we worked our way through the wait list, and then by the time that we got to the day, it was, we dropped below that. So, if we hit 240 next year, maybe then I'll think about making it 300.
300. So you heard it here. He's got to hit 240. If you hit 240 next year, will you wear the pantaloons?
Nobody needs that. Sure.
Keep this up, and I'm going to dress like a marauder.
With like the fur and just like a furkini,
Too early in the day to be thinking like that. So yeah,
no, you got a point.
Yeah, come to CanCon. That's my point.
That's the point.
Especially
all right.
you. Especially you.
Especially me. All right. Look. So
Especially
I started a Patreon. Everyone, if you want to make me go to CanCon, go do that. There you go. I've helped. Now we've helped each other out.
Yep.
Go do the Patreon thing for Mr. Mephisto. Coach, man, you got a digital soapbox moment here. I see your. I know you got your own show too.
Look.
But some things that might not be safe to say as AOS Coach, maybe just as Mr. Magro here on RantCast.
I would my encouragement to everyone here would be being that Australia is like the content creator capital of the world.
It's a true story.
There is so many great people who have gone out there and have put their own spin and their own feedback on CanCon. The Honest Wargamer did an interview with the person who lost on stream for the winner of the game. So James Page beat Simon Hall, who was running Hammer Hall. So he did a wonderful interview with Simon that I'd highly recommend checking out. I would give shout outs to, myself. I interviewed the winner, James Page. I'm sure the likes of the Heralds of War, the Failed Charge, Measured Gaming. There are so many wonderful content creators out there. I'm sure Notorious are going to put their own spin on this. So I'd highly recommend checking out people's own perceptions and experiences of this wonderful event.
Right.
And if CanCon doesn't work for you, I run an event in October called Sydney GT. So this year it's called Where the Wild Things Are. I'm just saying, if people want to come and they can't come in January.
See, October, I mean, not to throw shade at you, Clint, this is this is the CanCon recap, but October's my favorite month, like in the whole year. And January,
not because of Magro's event though, like
but like
of Halloween and stuff.
Halloween, my anniversary. It's always been a time of year where like things are dying, and that's fucking metal. Because I play death. So I've always loved like October, but man, it's hard for me to like CanCon or Sydney GT.
I would escape the snow and come to CanCon.
Yeah. Look, you want to come to Australia for its beaches. You want to come to its food. You want to come for the nightlife. So January, which is when CanCon on, is definitely worth the trip. So I'd highly recommend everyone comes.
Look at this humility. You're allowed to be a villain.
I've been a villain the whole episode. I've been the villain. You're correct. Liam is my villain.
Yeah.
Shout out to Liam.
Yeah, the villain, right? Oh man,
I love him.
No, so back to you, Clint. If people want to actually get in contact with you for CanCon, or they want to listen to you spitfire on your own show, where can they do these things?
on Twitter at Heralds of War. We're also on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page there, or heraldsofwar.com has all of the stuff up from this year's CanCon. So if people are interested in lists or the pack or whatever, the stuff we've talked about, it'll be up there for a little while yet. So yeah, but just getting in touch with me on Twitter is probably the easiest way.
Right on. And Coach, man, if they wanna talk to you about
I'm on Twitter, Anthony Magro channel. I have a Twitter channel. Of course, I have a Twitter channel. I have a podcast. I have a Facebook page. If you type in AOS Coach, you will find me. And we did like the data shows. We did the stat show of emerging meta, as well as the actual meta itself in CanCon. And a bit of a hot take for your show, Meth, is that as of next month in the emerging meta series, I have been able to get some regional data as well, so I'll be able to see particularly any trends that are happening in the different countries as well. So
wow.
I'm looking forward to exploring that. So big shout out to AOS Reminders Davis for continually listening to my rants and making this happen.
Yeah, Davis Ford, his not to self honk here, but Davis Ford's episode on RantCast was pretty fantastic. He could basically have run RantCast without me. He was really very knowledgeable, really knew what he wanted to talk about and stuff like that. So he's a really cool guy. After you get done listening to this episode of RantCast, go back and find that one with Davis Ford. Listen to that. That's some good stuff. And it's great that he's been helping you with the meta, because as I've said before, a lot of data tends to be reactive that we use in the Age of Sigmar community. Yours is sort of preemptive or like active.
It's predictive analytics. It's right. All about, this is what people are creating with their lists. This is what they're practicing at home in their basements at their games club. If you're attending a tournament, or if you want to do really well, you want to understand what people are building around so that you can start to ask those questions. And even if you can't get experiences because you don't have a local Zench player playing Change Host right now, you can at least ask yourself the question, how would I handle an army that is going to generate benefits by casting spells, has the ability to move around the board, etc., etc.
Right.
And you're going to better prepare yourself mentally, physically, so you don't have a bad time. And that's really what this is all about. It's about having a good time with Age of Sigmar, right, and using data as intel.
Yeah. It's just helping you fill in that picture, right? And that's kind of what we do as content creators. All right, guys. I'm gonna let you get out here early because I know you have a whole day ahead of you. For you, and I'm winding up my evening here. You're in the future, after all. How's the future looking? Are we still good?
Very wet. Sorry.
In Australia, at least on the east coast where I am, it's raining non-stop for about 10 days. So I had to build a little brick barricade to stop water coming into my... So Australia's not on fire anymore. It's now flooding. This is what it's like living in the land of Gur. Monsters and spiders and...
Yeah.
Clint's been battling a whole bunch of spiders in his garage. I'm dealing with Noah's Arks and a flood that's coming.
Yeah, my backyard was flooding yesterday. Even though we are we're about 10 hours drive apart, it's just raining from one whole half of the country, and then the other half of the country is dealing with a cyclone at the moment. So up the top, which is crazy considering a month ago it was all on fire.
Yeah. Keeps you on your toes.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
All right.
Australia, please come.
Yeah. No, I mean, but you're coming during the right times, right? I mean, that was something I kind of wanted to ask in the show, and I guess we already started to kind of sign out here, but real quick while I've got you both still.
That's all right.
Gaming, running CanCon sort of in the midst of a basically a national disaster with the fires. How did that complicate matters, or what challenges did you face as a TO and a player?
The area where CanCon is was not under threat from fire, which was a good thing. But there were large parts of the eastern side of the country that were fire affected that made it unsafe for some people to travel. There were some drops who said, look, I don't want to have to deal with that. There was a smoke hazard in Canberra. Canberra it looked like Silent Hill for a couple of weeks before CanCon.
That is both
And so
awesome because I love Silent Hill and terrifying because it's reality and not a video game.
Yeah, and it was smoke rather than fog. So, like that was a concern as well. And some people expressed their concerns. Some people expressed their concerns in a positive, like in a constructive way, and others just alarmist and caused nuisance. But
Yeah.
so that was a thing, and we weren't sure. But the convention organisers had said, "Look, where we are is fine. It's not going to, it's in a safe area of Canberra as far as fire is concerned." They had hired industrial air cleaners to deal with any smoke. Like they had taken steps to make sure that it was going to be okay. And what actually happened was that the smoke over Canberra sort of cleared for that week of CanCon and that weekend. And then after we left was when the fire came, started to threaten parts of like the opposite side of Canberra where we were. So we lucked out and we got really good conditions, but it was a concern for people, and and I understand it was a concern, and I'm not brushing off anyone who was concerned about smoke or whatever, but it was very interesting because I was up here stressing about, am I going to lose half my field because A, they can't drive to the event because roads are cut off, B, will they not want to go and play in smoke, which I understand completely. Like, it was like, is this going to be a half-full CanCon because people just don't want to do it? And I would have understood completely, like, yeah. But
and I hope
it quite worked out.
Yeah, we got lucky, but there were some people where it was really dodgy, where some people got their flights postponed or cancelled, and it looked like they weren't going to come until the end of the event on the Sunday. We had a lot of luck that happened, so we're very fortunate for that. But the challenge is that going to CanCon for about 90 to 95% of the field is significant travel. It is long drives. It is expensive flights. There's not a lot of the local community in Canberra isn't making up a lot of the field. So I can fully appreciate and I can see where people just don't know the unknown, right? They see smoke, they see the media, but it was wonderful for us, and we were very fortunate at the time.
Yeah, you got lucky. Yeah, and that's the thing is that's a lot to like I said, sort of a national crisis here, and we're trying to play a game with like tiny plastic men, right? And it can be hard, and so you have to kind of, as a TO and as the content creator, you have to kind of mitigate some expectations or help in a way that your pack can't, right? At that point, like you have to actually be a voice of reason through the smoke, to be a little on the nose there.
Clint was very forthright with his information, always updating us. Was in constant contact with the event organizers, and they spoke about getting big commercial air purifiers. The event was doing the best that they could to run this event. So, like, credit to those guys as well.
That's pretty much it. Like, if they kept the TOs up to date, and then it was on the TOs to make sure that the players had that information as soon as they had it. Mm-hmm. Like, I was trying to give that information to my players within minutes of me getting it, because it's important that people feel updated and they feel like they know what's going on.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
How were you communicating that? Was it just tweeting at constantly?
Facebook generally, because we had a Facebook event for the thing, and trying to provide the updates that way.
Yeah. Right on. Cool. Well, I'm happy it worked out. It looked, just from all my sort of my view of social media, some of the coverage, some of the coverage I was able to watch there. It looked like people had a blast. It looked like it was a smashing success in the face of a natural disaster. People still managed to have a great time, play a game they love with people they love, and I think that's the real success here.
Do yourself a favor and jump onto Twitter or Instagram, search up the hashtag for CanCon, You will see some amazing hobby. And also, the other day, the Honest Wargamer and Vince Venturella put out a video, and they did a bit of a showcase with the top 10 or top 14 coolest army best painted. So they did a little in-depth video as well, which is, regardless if I was there or not, is an awesome video I'd highly check out. There's some beautiful armies on the table, and even more beautiful armies that missed out on that nomination.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, cool. All right, guys. Any last words? Any parting words for our guests as I switch to the closeout here? Officially now?
No, we're cool.
Good. Thank you for allowing us to be on the shortest rant you've ever made.
I went back to back this week. Essentially, I wanted to give people this. This is the cherry on top of an already great RantCast. Sunday, I think. So, see, because it's Sunday in the future. But I'll have to have you both on and talk more of a ranty subject than just recapping LVO.
Let me do another one. I can rant about Clint. I rant about Clint's events.
Yeah. I'll let you on.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you say recapping LVO?
I said LVO. I meant CanCon. Hopefully, I didn't say LVO.
I can talk for hours about LVO. I just make it up.